Rev up your engines! Today I'm going to show you some things you can do, very easy things that'll keep your car lasting longer and save you a fortune in repairs, plus make your car last almost forever. Realize if you take your car to most mechanics, they're going to sell you a bunch of stuff, whether you need it or not, selling you things your car really doesn't need. So I'm here to show you the things you should do so you don't have to go to a mechanic and you will keep your car lasting without wasting any money. Now realize with modern cars, computers control more and more. And what ultimately powers these? Your car's battery. So you need to make sure you have your battery tested every once in a while to make sure that it's good. It's a very simple process, but if your battery gets below a certain voltage or has internal shorts in it, guess what? It can make the computer system go bonkers. I have worked on cars that would have 60 trouble codes when I hooked up my fancy computer, and you'd think, geez, the car's falling apart. The only thing wrong was the battery was weak, and when it got too weak, the computer systems couldn't get the correct amount of voltage, and it started getting weird voltage, and that tells the computer, oh, there's a problem, because it uses voltage to measure problems. So it picks up 67 problems when none exist. It was only the battery. So testing a battery is very simple. You just hook up your machine, make sure it's tight on the clamps, and then you set the machine. Testing it out, and it says replace battery. Now that doesn't surprise me at all because I came back from Rhode Island. It's been sitting there for 3 months. The battery was flat dead. That never happened before. So take this warning. Do not buy one of these batteries. This is a P24 AGM imported by FMP. Proving yet again that a label means nothing. Absorbed glass mat batteries are supposed to last longer. This baby didn't even last 3/4 of a year, and it's going bad. Stay away from that company. They're selling garbage. Not surprising. I look at the battery. It says made in Korea. I've seen many poor batteries made in Korea. Stay away from this company. Don't buy these batteries. So a lot of this has to show you it isn't just the price of the battery. It's the quality of the battery and where you buy from. You get something online like this, I advise to buy locally. You get a bad battery, you can take it back and get one. You're going to be waiting for something coming on the internet. I don't think so. Keep that in mind. Price around. Maybe Walmart's got the best price. Buying from an unknown company like this, in my case, it burnt me. Hilariously enough, I'm going to replace it with my AutoZone Duralast battery that I bought 3.5 years ago. It still worked fine. I thought I'd try this company out. No dice. Stay away from them. Just because it says AGM, absorbed glass mat, doesn't mean it's necessarily a good battery. Now the next thing to check is your fan belt. Technically they don't run the fan. They have electric fans, but do check it every once in a while. If this belt breaks, nothing works. This is a one belt system. The water pump will start pumping. Your engine will overheat. You can be stranded in the middle of nowhere. It lasts a lot longer than the old-fashioned fan belts. It got all those grooves. I changed this one. It really didn't need changing. I put it in the trunk as a spare. But I changed it when the car was like 10 years old. Now it's 17 years old. That belt's still going fine. You see if it's got cracks in it. And if it does make a noise, you hear it squeaking in the morning, realize these things, almost all of them have automatic tensioners. They tension themselves. So if it starts squeaking, it squeaks because it can't adjust it any tighter because the belt's stretched as far as it can stretch for the tensioner. And in that case, you would put a new belt on if it starts squeaking when it's older. Of course, if you did put a new belt on and it still squeaked, that'd mean you'd need a new tensioner. But the tensioners cost a lot of money and they generally last forever. The belts will just stretch. Now, unlike the old-fashioned fan belts, they don't necessarily crack. Now, if you see they're all cracked, of course, replace them. You look on the inside, they're all cracked, you want to replace them. But even if they're not cracked, they will stretch. They last so long that they often won't crack, but they'll be stretched so far, it'll start to squeal, especially if you go through a puddle, it'll start to squeal. That just means it's time to change it. Now, the next thing to check is your car's air filter. It's just hiding inside here. You can see this one's perfectly fine. I just changed it before I came from Rhode Island, Tennessee. It's all clean. This happens to be red because it looks fancy. But we live in such a polluted world, those things can clog up fast. It all depends on where you are. If you live in a clean atmosphere, say out in the country where the air is pure, and you're driving on regular roads, not dirt roads, it'll last a long time. But of course, if you drive on dirt, dusty roads, it'll clog up faster. You can get a shop vac and clean them if you want, or just replace them. So it's a good idea to check them maybe once or twice a year, just because, hey, you don't know how dirty it is outside. And of course, we don't want to be boring, but change your oil and filter correctly. If you're using full synthetic oil, change it about every 5,000 miles or once a year. And always use the right kind of oil. As you can see here, it says APISL 5W30 oil. The engineers designed them to use that oil. It's the right oil. Most cars today might use a 015, 020, 012 oil. Use the oil that was required. And don't listen to any of this horse manure about you can change it every 10 or 15,000 miles. That's nonsense. If you do normal, a lot of stop and go city driving, you'll ruin your engine. I've had people change them every 10,000 miles, especially in Hondas or in Chryslers. And then you find out when the cars get 70, 80,000 miles, they start burning a lot of oil. If you change it every 5,000 miles and buy a good car like this Toyota, this thing is 17 years old. It still doesn't burn oil because I use full synthetic oil, a full synthetic oil filter, and I change it every 5,000 miles or once a year. It used to be once a year, but now I go back and forth to Rhode Island, Tennessee all the time. So I change it every 5,000 miles. And of course, do the obvious things like check all the fluids. There's the power steering fluid. It's full. There's the windshield washer squirter. This has a little dipstick. It's full too. Cool that it has a dipstick. Check the brake fluid. You can see it's full. We talked about checking the battery, but also make sure it's not all corroded. This isn't corroded. It's on nice and tight. If you got an old car like mine, 07, you can actually check the transmission fluid, which is a good thing. And on hot summer days, you're going to run your air conditioning. What you want to do is this. It's a very simple test. You start the car up, turn the AC on full blast, then go to the outside of the car and make sure that your cooling fan is blowing. Strong. Now this is an old basic car. It's got one cooling fan. Many cars today have two cooling fans. One's for the radiator and one is for the air conditioning system. The AC turned on full blast. Make sure both fans will run. If only one fan runs, you'll find either your air conditioning isn't blowing quite as cold as it used to. If the air conditioning fan is broken, or let's say the air conditioning fan works, but the radiator cooling fan doesn't work when you have two fans. Then you'll notice your car runs warmer than usual, especially when you're in stop and go traffic when it's 100 degrees outside. Make sure the cooling fans are working in both of them. Now, these things are available aftermarket. You can usually get a whole thing for 100-something bucks. If you got one fan or two fans, you just buy the whole thing. It bolts on, bolts off, takes you 15, 20 minutes to put it on. You can easily fix it yourself rather than go to a mechanic and they're going to try to sell you the moon. Now, most people never think about their tires until they get a flat. So, every month or two, get yourself a tire gauge, measure the pressure. In this case, it's 32 psi when the car is cold. Ice cold before you drive it. Understand the biggest thing of them all is low tire pressure makes your tire easily punctured by nails and screws and pieces of glass. The more pressure your tire has, up to a certain extent, the harder it is for the nails to go in when they're low and flat. It's easy for nails to puncture them. So you don't want punctured tires with nails going in. You put in 32, 34, whatever you decide you're going to use. It will keep the tire from getting flats a lot better than a tire that doesn't have enough pressure, and of course, one that's going bald. So check your tires every once in a while. You can see these have lots of tread. They're evenly worn. These tires are only a year old. I mean, they're in phenomenal shape. But do check them all, because if you miss one, maybe it's got a nail in it. Maybe it's wearing off because you got a worn shock absorber or something. Just by looking at your tires every once in a while, you can get a good idea of, is the alignment right? They're not wearing strange. Are the struts worn out? Are they all cupped on the edges from bouncing up too much? And of course, the tires themselves, are they safe? Realize this, as nutty as it sounds. Say your tires are completely bald. When you're going down the road on flat pavement, they actually have more traction because all that rubber's on the road. As soon as it starts raining, bald tires are going to slide all over the place. You're going to kill yourself. The reason there's grooves in the tread, and these are special rain tires, it pushes the rain to the side so that the rubber stays on the road and the water slides to the side instead of you riding on a bit of water. That's why it's called hydroplaning. You got bald tires, you go on the water, you'll start hydroplaning. You're sliding on top of the water, which is a bad thing. You look at those tires, they're starting to get bald. Definitely get some new ones. But like I said, inspect them yourself every so often. Guys are going to sell you stuff you don't need. Oh, your tires are going bad. If you don't know what they're supposed to look like, these people can screw you over. Same thing with the shocks or struts. Look at them every once in a while with a flashlight. If you look inside here and this is all covered with oil, it means they're leaking. If it's bone dry, it's fine. But sleazy car repair places, they'll squirt a little oil on here and say, oh, it's leaking, you need new ones. Check them first with your own bare hands. Look, it's not that hard. It's just right here. You don't have an unsafe car, but at the same time, you don't want to get ripped off. Many mechanics these days rip anybody. They'll sell them everything. The kitchen sink. You need this. You need that. I've had so many people bring me cars that they said they needed $4,500 worth of work, and I'd say, well, you might want to do $400 of this brake work. They're getting thin, but you can wait if you want. They'll usually say, I'll go ahead and do it, and then I'll do the brake job for them. But I'll show them. This isn't worn, this isn't worn, this isn't worn. Then they just try to sell you a bunch of crap you don't need. That's just how the world goes these days. Now, one of the most oversold things are fuel injection cleaning. We'll clean your fuel injection system for $149.95 right now. If your car runs the same as it always did, you get about the same gas mileage that you always did. You don't have any problem starting it. You don't need your fuel injection system cleaned. This is a 17-year-old Matrix. You know how many times it's had the fuel injection system cleaned? Never. Granted, my 30-year-old Celica has had the fuel injector cleaned once, but that was for that HHO cleaning video. A company came and said, hey, we got the system where we put water in and then we turn it to hydrogen and oxygen on our machine, and then we inject the hydrogen and it cleans out your car. I had them do that, and it did clean quite a bit of the carbon out. I mean, the car still ran fine before, but I used it to show exactly what happens when these things clean it. And I showed that when you put a bore scope in, it was somewhat cleaner. Now, even then, it didn't affect the running of the car. It still ran perfectly fine before and after. Now, of course, I'm not saying don't do preventive maintenance. For example, this hide rehab that I've used for a while, it's a company called Lithium. It makes some pretty good products. I like trying their stuff out. It's not cheap, it's relatively expensive, but it does a good job. This baby's got leather seats. Now you can say they're in pretty good shape, but that's because I use this stuff on it, this hide rehab. You just wipe it on every once in a while, work its way through, and you can see, look at that. This is 22-year-old leather seats. You take care of things, they can last a long time. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is gasoline. Most cars these days don't waste your money on premium gasoline. The lowest price gasoline will run fine in just about any car these days. You throw premium gas in them, you're just throwing your money away. This Lexus never ran on anything except regular gas. It runs perfectly fine. Now, if you're an absolute fanatic, let's say you got a Ford Mustang EcoBoost with a 4-cylinder turbo, yeah, you'll get like 340 horsepower if you use premium gas, and then you'll lose like 40 horsepower or so if you use regular gas. It'll run okay, but you lose a little bit of power. It'll still run perfectly fine. But most cars, they run fine on regular gasoline. Do not throw your money away buying premium gas because it isn't going to make your car run any better. So now I know a few things you should not throw your money away on, and some things that you should spend your money on, like battery testing, oil changes, checking your tires. It'll make you have a safe ride, and one that isn't going to leave you stranded on the road with some greedy mechanic just waiting to rip you off. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.